at the end of the day, we also knew we were going to make a horror film. You want to have a certain amount of elements in there. You want to please a horror audience, which was an interesting exercise for me because I am terrified of scary films. I'm not a big fan of horror.
Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watch or Pass, and today I'm talking to Hannah Kent, international best-selling author and the writer of Run Rabbit Run, which premiered on the Sundance Midnight Stage today, January 20th, 2023. We're going to talk to her right now, and while you're watching, if you can like and subscribe to this channel, that would be fantastic. Helps me out a lot. Thank you. Awesome. So thanks so much for joining me. This is Hannah Kent, the writer of Run Rabbit Run, which premiered on the Midnight Stage at Sundance today, January 20th, 2023. It is a creepy, atmospheric film that kind of gets under your skin and just kind of like unsettles you for a good hour and a half. It was a fascinating watch, and thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. So the first question I have, so I'm still trying to process this film. I saw it last night and again today. I think the moral of the story is that you shouldn't have children, that children are no good. Is that what you were trying to convey?
Bingo. No,
Okay.
probably a little bit more complicated than that, but we definitely wanted to dive into the ambivalence of parenthood. So, there is a bit of it. There is a bit of, the taboo, I guess, the taboo attitudes around raising children.
It's just Mia just reminded me so much of the kid in the Babadook, except less crazy, but still just had those similar outbursts. And I loved kind of how her character developed. I guess so. We'll go back to the original part. You're the writer. What was the inspiration for this film, like for this story? Was it something personal? Was it just something you were interested in? Maybe a combination of the two?
Yeah, well, my background is in writing novels. So this is my first screenplay, and I didn't really have any intentions to go into the industry, but I was approached by the now producers of the film, Sarah Shaw and Anna McLeish from Carver, because they thought, I think my books had maybe a visual sensibility. They were interested in if I ever wanted to write for screen, would we have a conversation? And we had this really interesting pitch meeting where I gave them all these terrible ideas, and they were very polite, but then they sort of said, let us come back if you ever think of anything else. And then when we were finishing up the meeting, just having, a chit chat, I started talking about this book that I was really interested in writing. I'd become really fascinated with these true stories of children who report previous lives, of being someone else, who talk of missing other mothers. And I was interested in these because they are inherently interesting, but I was specifically interested in exploring this experience from the perspective of a parent. So I thought, how alienating, how upsetting, how actually quite traumatic to have a child in distress because they miss, another imaginary parent, whether that be real or not, And so we started having this conversation, and then this conversation continued to develop, I think, where we were talking about the ambiguity that can lie at the heart of motherhood, the things that people don't really talk about, the taboo emotions, the fears of hurting your child, or of not being a very good mother, the fear that you are a monstrous mother. Is there such a thing of culpability, of the things that children can do that are kind of mean and intense. I think so often we are fed a narrative in our society of motherhood being this very sweet experience, that it should be, that if your experiences are different. And I think you can see this in the silence that has shrouded experiences of postnatal anxiety and depression. There's very often not a space for women to speak to those experiences, and similarly I think there's not always a space for parents to speak to difficult experiences of parenting difficult children, or just children behaving badly as well. So we were really interested in bringing all these ideas together, and then once we started really drilling into this character of Sarah, who she was, what was her history, why is she struggling being a mother, how well is she keeping a lid of normalcy, on the surface, what sort of things are simmering underneath, and what might trigger that release and a fractured relationship with a child. So it was very much a character-centric conversation around these sorts of themes. And then the project developed over quite a number of years. We sort of worked it out through drafting, seeing what was sticking, seeing what interested us. And then we started moving it into sort of the genre of a psychological horror. And that was when we were really able, I think, to drill down in a very intense way into these themes of, the ambivalent or the bad mother or the monstrous mother, and the ways in which self-loathing can impact your ability to mother, the way in which, you know, unaddressed trauma can also be massively disruptive. So yeah, it was a really interesting, actually quite an intellectual exercise in developing the story and developing the character. But absolutely, plot was kind of secondary. It was always about these issues as explored through a character experience.
For sure. And I love how you kind of started off in this kind of exploration, you know, trying to understand these emotions and these fascinating stories, and then kind of naturally drifted into psychological horror, because I have children. Raising children can often be a psychological horror. So this does feel like a very natural way to explore these kind of complicated themes and make it into like also an entertaining, unsettling overall experience while you are looking into some of these ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to make it uncomfortable. And I think that was, you know, that was part of the, I mean, at the end of the day, we also knew we were going to make a horror film. You want to have a certain amount of elements in there. You want to please a horror audience, which was an interesting exercise for me, because I am terrified of scary films. I'm not a big fan of horror, because I am so easily frightened and I can't stop thinking about them. So that was a really interesting perspective, to be on the sort of the other end of the stick, so to speak. But yeah, we were all mothers. You know, we were all parents like yourself, and it was interesting to have some very honest and vulnerable conversations about experiences or about fears, particularly, and then to feed those into the character and into the narrative.
Definitely, for sure. You know, when I was watching this, I was like, maybe I should have my wife come watch this with me. And I was like, ooh, you know what? This might actually be a little too raw sometimes. Like some of the things that are explored, like some of the, you know, things that are said do feel like things that a child could say just when they're trying to get attention or when they're just upset. Or, you know, as a movie kind of looks into, maybe there's some other reason for some of these things that are happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I mean, horror is such a wonderful genre, I think, to explore that which is generally considered taboo or abject. And, you know, there's still so much about parenting, I think, particularly motherhood, that no one talks about, or that is considered taboo if you do express it. And the condemnation that can sweep down too upon mothers is just intense and immediate. And yeah, I think that was something that we were all really mindful of when we were sort of conceiving of the film. And it was a really lovely process for me to learn, I guess, a little bit more about the genre and the ways in which you can use it to have this kind of exploration whilst at the same time, you know, providing entertainment.
For sure. And I've talked to a lot of horror directors and writers. There are a lot of people that do not watch horror that are in the field. So welcome. I also, when I first started watching horror, I was not a horror fan, and just kind of like gradually have embraced it more and more. And now it's one of my favorite genres. So just, you know, I guess you can expose yourself a little more.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, actually, on the plane over, I read Misery by Stephen King for the first time, and I was reading it through my fingers. You know, so I'm making a small sort of, you know, entryway into it.
That feels kind of like an occupational hazard. You probably have a more kind of visual memory, or like a visualization aspect when you're reading something than most people would. So you probably are experiencing it very differently than most people read a book.
Yeah, particularly as a writer, I think it has just a whole new other level of horror, Misery. But
exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you know, kind of going with the visualization aspect, one thing I'm always curious about, you know, when you were writing this, the characters existed in your head. When you saw, you know, the talent cast, or, you know, maybe when you saw the final product, did they look anything like what you were thinking when you were writing this, or did you maybe not have them fully kind of personified when you were writing? You just had kind of their personalities and their backgrounds?
I think because this was always going to be a screenplay, you know, it wasn't a novel that was then going to be adapted. It kind of changed, I guess, my attitude to that kind of process of visualization. I intentionally didn't visualize the characters. I think I hear them more than see them. But what was so exciting was I knew that it was going to be cast, and, you know, and the various people who might be cast would bring different things to the role, and probably completely, and as I think has happened, completely shape the way the narrative is told, to shift the focus on particular elements of character. I mean, that's the beauty of an incredible cast, is that they sort of take the baton and run with it. So I knew I was only really doing one leg of the relay race, and Daina too. You know, there's, and I mean, the art director, the director of photography. I mean, everyone is just bringing their excellence and their experience and talent to something which, you know, you've sort of offered up. So I knew it was only a very small element, and that everything was likely to change. But that I think was the joy of a project like this, as opposed to, say, a novel where you are it's completely autonomous. You have utter control, and you're also utterly responsible for it. What was so great was being able to sort of be a part of that creative spirit, that creative energy, but also know that everyone else is bringing their best to it too. And then, so the first time I saw the film was last night at the premiere. And so to, see it and to see the incredible performances, and oh my God, Lily LaTourre, like what an incredible actress. But the music, all the various elements, you just see it completely elevated beyond anything you can really conceive of when you're writing it. And so I deliberately didn't try to sort of, anticipate what it would be like. I wanted to sort of be surprised, I guess, by what other people would bring.
For sure. And that when you have a really good team, like the final product does kind of have elements of everything. It came together very nicely, especially the music. The music was just so perfect and unsettling. One last question. Do you have that creepy bunny mask? Do you know where that thing ended up?
I wish I had it. Do you know what was so funny though? It was around the same time my own daughter started wearing a really creepy bunny mask. So I have plenty of creepy bunny masks at home. I have no idea where they came from either. She pulled it out of the dress ups one day. So, I'm pretty good with creepy bunny masks, but it would have been a nice souvenir from set for sure.
Your daughter, who has since disappeared somehow, went somewhere, you don't know where, started wearing the creepy bunny mask, right?
Oh, I have to tell you a funny story though. No, she's alive and very, very well, and beloved. But the little actress, Lily LaTourre, who plays Mia, she did come up to me when I visited set and said, is this based on a true story? And, she didn't know everything to do with the film, obviously, being a child, but I had to sort of explain to her, no, it's completely made up. I've never done anything this heinous. So that was a nice moment. Her poor mother was standing next to her, but no, she's a wonderful kid and does an incredible job.
You're like, no, I've never done anything. It's all on my head, right? That's
yeah,
okay.
No, that much might be worse. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure which one is worse. And they just give her that smile. Okay, and one last question. I know you have a very busy schedule. Did you ever have a rabbit growing up?
I didn't think we had, and then when I was talking about this with my parents, they pulled out a photo where apparently we babysat a rabbit for 2 weeks. So no idea what happened to that rabbit. But yeah, I have many more memories of my dad actually telling me about getting them, because he grew up in that area, and they're an absolute introduced pest in Australia. So yeah, they're not very popular pets necessarily, I would say, in Australia because of that. But yeah, apparently I did for 2 weeks, but who knows, it's all that repressed memory stuff. Who knows what floats to the surface.
I was gonna say, I can't wait for you to start unpacking some of these other memories and get some more horror stories, because I am looking forward to seeing them. Well, I know you have a busy schedule. Your movie just premiered. You're talking to everyone, so thank you so much for your time. This is Hannah Kent, the writer of Run Rabbit Run, which premiered on the midnight stage at Sundance 2023 today, January 20, 2023. It is unsettling. It is a kind of atmospheric experience. It'll probably run the festival circuit, so check it out there. And then I imagine it'll come to theaters and potentially Shudder. This feels like a Shudder movie, but you will be able to see it, and definitely check it out when you can. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
That was Hannah Kent, the writer of Run Rabbit Run, which premiered on the midnight stage on Sundance 2023 on January 20th, 2023. It is a creepy, atmospheric film that just does so much right. I love the music. I love the setting. It is a very interesting film. I bet it'll run the festival circuit for a few more rounds and then probably end up on Shudder. This feels like a movie that will end up on Shudder, so you should definitely check it out when you get a chance. And thanks so much for watching. If you like this interview, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.